Hey, how's it going everybody? My name is SockBot, and today we are getting back into game creation. So, more specifically, for anyone that has an idea for a level, but doesn't really know where to start, or maybe is started but doesn't really know where to go from here, maybe you're getting discouraged or something like that, I got you. Now, this is specifically for those of you who already have an idea for the type of level you're going to make, so if you are still stuck on the brainstorming ideas for your game or level section of the game creation process, I do have other videos about that, so feel free to go watch those and then come back here when you are kind of more specific on what you know you want to create, or what genre at least. Game creation. So those included, those videos. I have made a bunch of videos in general on how to make levels in games, and honestly, these are my favorite type of video to make. So if you do enjoy these types of videos, please leave a like down below if you want to. No pressure, obviously. Game creation. Or subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this, or talk to me more in the comments if you want to do that too. So yeah, that's enough plugging. So good. Alright, let's get started. So, you have an idea if you're watching this video at this point, I'm assuming. So, congratulations, you are ready to start making a level. As always, I do recommend jumping right in and just starting to build whatever has come to your mind over this kind of genre. And that way it's not gonna let you get discouraged or take too much time to start, and honestly, that sort of block from beginning the level is one of the hardest parts of creating a level. And so that's great and all, but that's not the point of today's video. Today we are actually going to do some planning, and hopefully this planning is going to help you get past some of the mental blocks that we all get, and more specifically keep you excited about creating your game masterpiece. Or of course, if you haven't started, kind of get you excited before you start. So this kind of planning does revolve around 3 separate steps that I have divided it into. Number 1 is separating your level into specific chunks. Now, I know that doesn't mean anything to you because chunks is very broad, and I kind of realized that before making this video, which is why I put it off for a while, but luckily, earlier today, I found another person who explained it way better than I did, even if he has some different opinions about the process in general, but his name was Mike Stout, and I will link the article down below because he writes for the game development site. And he calls these chunks, as I so gracefully called them, he calls them areas or rooms. So even if they're not necessarily indoor rooms. Yeah. In other words, the point of this step and the point of these areas is to give a better sense of progression through your level from one area to the next until the end. Now, I know that we talk about progression in like every single video I make, but seriously, think of how other level-based games work. The developers for these games are going to reward the player through a lot of different avenues and give them a lot of different rewards, but one of the biggest places they start is by rewarding the player that finishes the first area by seeing the second area. Now, I'm sure you've heard the phrase or said it yourself, oh, I keep dying at this like one part. Well, that part is this type of area. I know it's a lot of air quotes there, but why is this helpful? Well, assuming that you do have an idea for a level, say you want to create some sort of sci-fi level, it is a lot easier to just think of sci-fi scenes than it is to just jump in and start creating a game from obstacle 1. I mean, I'm sure that you've seen hundreds of sci-fi scenes in movies and video games, even if you aren't a huge fan of the series, though I don't know why you would want to make a genre game that you're not interested in. But yeah, for those ones you have like the ship scenes where you're sitting in the cockpit or the living quarters, or if you're an Alien fan, the air ducts. Terrifying, I know. But then you have like the outside of the ship scenes, like the spacewalk and the space battles, and all of this is just space-based sci-fi. So you can think of these and the ones that you've seen and kind of decide which sound fun to you and which make sense in your level. And so that's step 1. Those are your areas. Now, step 2 is going to be telling yourself what happens in those areas that you've already thought of. So like a sci-fi dogfight, that's pretty straightforward in terms of what's there, but if the scene's more broad, you're going to want to pick it apart further. So for example, I was making an ancient alien-themed desert level recently. You can actually check out the beginning of it right here. Nailed that plug, Gabe, good job. So I had the first scene, which was a collapsing bridge, and then following that you kind of use that collapsing bridge to escape from the aliens that are chasing you, and you do that through an underground tunnel, which then leads to an elevator which goes directly up into the pyramid. I know, weird futuristic stuff in a pyramid, that's kind of the point of Ancient Aliens, but yeah, I realized at that point I didn't know where to go, so even the ancient pyramid trope was way too broad to like work well enough for this scene, so I had to break it down, and I break it down into the booby trap room, into the pharaoh sarcophagus room, and then the treasure room. So yeah, done. Basically, the point of this is to break it down into a point where each area kind of promotes and makes it obvious what should exist with that area. So like if it's a fast-paced or slow-paced area, if there's enemies, is there going to be some sort of puzzle? Ask those questions to yourself, and once you've broken it down enough, it should pretty much be apparent what makes sense in the scene, just kind of how I knew that in the booby trap scene, in the booby trap room, I wanted a puzzle that followed a time escape after you failed the puzzle. So that kind of leads then into step 3, and this is what I've been talking about this whole time. The minute part of your specific scene are the obstacles, and some of those are going to be very obvious from the second that you start making the level, and definitely build those right away. But as a minor note, don't get too caught up in that sort of tech part, because if you are making something that's more complicated, you're going to just want to build the skeleton of that specific obstacle and then just come back later. Trust me, it's way easier to come back at the end of a level and fix some tech or create some tech than it is to continue a level after you spend 45 minutes creating a 6-second set piece. But don't worry, if you have come to this point in step 3, this point right here, and you have no idea of the obstacles that you want to make, just start with the background. You can draw the scene either in-game or in a notebook, and I've done this so many times, and you want to start with the background, start with the general idea, but then you want to really focus and kind of think on those details that you're creating in the scene. So you think on them, but don't spend an hour drawing them. And so if you're building a magical forest, for example, create a fairy circle as one of these details. Make some simple trees, knock one of them over, hollow it out, maybe create some huge bee enemies, but save the tech for later. Focus on how these are going to interact with the player after you've drawn them or created them in game. And so, for example, for this magical forest, that's your area, but if you have Sackboy in him, running through a whole hollowed out log and jumping on plants kind of makes sense. If your character is a tree giant, though, stomping through the forest and knocking down smaller trees might make more sense. If your character is like Swoop, or there's some kind of strange game mechanic that makes it very different from that normal type of game, and they can just fly over or fly past all the obstacles, maybe make that character being chased by a huge swarm of bees or running from a forest fire. In other words, if all of this is nonsense, I'm just trying to tell you one thing. Make the details of your background come to life. Whether they're a visual set piece or an obstacle, that's going to come to you as you physically create them. So if you have gone from a genre at the beginning of this video to dividing it into different areas, well, you're following the steps. Divide it into areas, say what you want to happen in those scenes, and, well, then map out what part of those scenes are physically present in your level, and, more specifically, how they're going to interact with the player. So, 3 steps. I know I make it sound simple, but it really is that simple, and so those 3 steps are kind of laid out from the beginning, but you can follow the second 2 if you have more than one area in your level, which generally is the case. So, hey, the most important thing I can tell you is just keep creating, and philosophically, I think I mentioned this a lot, but I want to restate it. Your scenes and your game don't have to make sense in the real world or in any other set of rules that you've been given by other fantasy or sci-fi or whatever tropes that you've read or seen. If you want to make that enormous tree that I mentioned earlier, the tree giant terrified of tiny bees, make him run from a giant swarm of bees or something like that, just so the character can see it. The point is, don't be scared to be weird. In game creation, weird is really good. Game creation. But anyways, good luck, creators like myself, and if you do like this biz and all these types of videos, please do like and subscribe to my channel if you very much want to, or if you just kind of want to and want to see more to see if I'm worth watching. I promise I'll do my best to be. But I do love you guys very much. Thank you very much for watching, and I will talk to you guys in the next video if you do watch that. Yeah, more game creation videos coming soon. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye. Oh gosh, I gotta stop stretching at the end of videos, because every time I stretch, I yawn, and I feel like my buys are turning into yawns more so than they're turning into like actual buys.